yeah, there's certain producers who I know when they send me something, like, they don't want my opinion of where delay throws should be. They don't want my opinion of what I think should happen. And there's other times when I'll just straight up mute a track and like I worked on a mix today that I just got notes back on, and it's like, I muted for verse 2. I was like, we don't need claps here. I just like muted the claps for the first half. And then when they came back, I like put delay on them so that they were like more interesting, and it pushed the energy forward. But I mean, I totally changed their production by doing that, you know?
For sure.
Sometimes I'll even like, I might have done this one on the Zoe tune, but sometimes on the delay throws, I'll even tune them differently so that like it finishes the phrase. So if it doesn't, let's say, end on the note that I think it should end on to like resolve the whole like delay throw phrase, I'll tune it down, you know, just like a single note.
Right. That's smart. I like that.
Certain things to just, you know, it's again, it's like faking ad libs that weren't there. It's again, me taking a producer hat a little bit and making, you know, certain ideas. But yeah, that's my sauce. That's all the secrets I
like
have.
that.
As far as mixing, that's all the secrets I have. I tune delay throws and
that's
I
great.
put delay throws where they shouldn't be sometimes.
Yeah. You don't have to take the sauce that literally, but it's just like a fun little segment to kind of get people to kind of, but it's nice for like people to kind of hear what you're working on after they hear you talk about it for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, my buddy told me you should start doing segments. I was like, that probably would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, well, that's like I even love the like Pensado, how he does like the batter's box or whatever thing.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's cool.
Exactly. I've been told to do more segments, but I don't know if I want to do more segments. Maybe one day.
It's TikTok viral, man. You could do segments and they could go viral on TikTok, and you could.
Oh yeah, maybe that would be helpful for my career.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll think about it. But
brings the whole conversation full circle where we started with TikTok. Yeah.
Oh, totally. Well, actually, I had another question based on what you were kind of saying. Cool. Of like how people, you know, they leave you to kind of do some of those creative things because they know you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Did Sam master this song?
Sam did master that song, yes.
So I have a question for you based on having interviewed Sam also.
Okay.
You know, because Sam kind of talked about how people don't really know what mixes sound like because we're all referencing masters, right? When we're mixing, we're referencing masters. But when we get to the mastering engineer, like they've heard mixes, they know what mixes sound like. So what are you leaving for Sam to kind of do at the very end that you haven't necessarily ticked off your to-do list on the mix? What's the in-between?
I don't know. You should ask him. I'd be curious his
answer. What did you hear?
I mean,
what did you hear back?
I don't like to do that. I don't really A/B like the mix versus the master. Like I just have a relationship with Sam or whatnot, or just
you trust him.
Yeah, like again, sure. I think you get to a certain point, like it's rare that I get a mix back that I'm like, what happened here? But like also, like my mixes are masters. You know, like I'll deliver at the end of it all. I call it ref master, and then I'll take my final like gain stage limiter or two off. But again, I'm not a top-down guy, so my mix doesn't really change. All I'm killing is some headroom with that final limiter. So my mix is already pretty, like, baked. So, you know, stuff coming back from Sam might just dial the low end a little more or just take a little bit of low end away so that we can get more loudness or, you know, but it's rare that I feel like Sam's actually doing any heavy lifting on like where I leave things at. Maybe a little bit of like just a frequency rebalance type thing or, you know, he's big into just making sure the low end is sort of blown out and big. And, you know, that kind of brings some energy and whatnot. So I guess to answer your question, like I make my mixes sound like a master. Like I'm not like making my mix sound like a mix. Like I need to make it sound like a master because I know when I send a mix away, they're going to play it next to Spotify stuff. They're going to be jamming Spotify on their phone. They're going to be listening to whatever it is. I'm going to send them a mix at, 2 p.m. on a Tuesday and they're going to go like, oh yes, awesome, the mix. And they're going to pull up on their phone and they're going to play it immediately after they just played Justin Bieber. So if it doesn't slap next to Justin Bieber coming off Spotify, I failed. Like they're going to be like, yeah, I don't know. Like, so I have to make it sound like a master.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure Sam has a wildly different answer for that. But, his thing, which I also agree with and love about Sam in general. I mean, again, relationship wise, like Sam and I have been working together for years, but it's the peace of mind. Like knowing Sam mastered it is so much more peace of mind than going to somebody else who I'm like, I just don't have a relationship with you. Like, I just don't know. Like I would trust that if something were wrong with the files, Sam would call me, or I trust that, Sam's done everything and he knows my style and he knows what I do and he knows not to.
Yeah.
He knows
Totally.
not to go in there and manipulate to death. Like, he knows the mix was intentional and that if there is distortion in a certain spot, it was probably intentional or whatever it may be. So it's the peace of mind behind it all. I don't think he's like heavy lifting. Maybe he is. I don't know. Would be a fun two-way conversation to have and see what his response.
If Sam is listening to this conversation, then Sam can kind of give us a retort or something, and I'll share it in the Instagram stories or something.
He's always like weird to ask about that too, because I will sometimes like listen to his master in A/B, and I'm always just like, "What did you do? Like, it doesn't sound like you did anything, but it's better. Like you didn't change anything. Like maybe there's some more low end or something, but like it's better." And his answer is always like, I just boosted DB here. So like there is some like weird magic.
It's just the Oxford inflator.
Probably.
That's.
Well, it's like you said earlier too. Like part of it's just the perspective. Like it's a totally different perspective for me to like hit download from Sam's master and hit play, than it is for me to like hit play on my own mix. It might just be the different file name. It might just be that. But it's psychologically like, oh yeah, this is better because it says Moses mastered on it.
I think it's because you've checked out of the in progress mindset of like, oh, you know what? Oh, now that I've listened back again, maybe I will like boost the vocal in that one spot, or maybe I will like, maybe I'll try to get rid of some resonance in the bass or whatever, something. And then when you hear a master, you're just trying to like see, what's the gestalt? Does it feel good as a whole? You're not in that like there's something else to mess with because the mix is over.
It's all psychological. And that's again relationship thing. Like that's why I know how to deliver a mix to one person versus another. Like it's psychological. Like you have to kind of walk people through it. Sometimes you have to explain a little bit of like, hey, this is going to sound different than the rough, but like I think it feels great. Like I love it. It does this. Like. Because you have to set psychologically people up for a mix sometimes, or sometimes, you're just kind of navigating the emotions of like, there's a million things they were worried about, or this is the first time they've ever sent something to mix, so they don't know what to expect. Like, so that's why having the relationship's important.
Yeah. It's a relationship business. Like
absolutely. Yeah.
Everyone, people are so used to sitting in their man/woman cave and you know what I mean? Like people forget that there's a whole world out there of other people that we need to connect with. And that's really the secret of like everybody who like went to like audio school. They say that the only thing or the biggest thing they got out of it at least was making connections that helped them down the line. You know what I mean? It wasn't the actual education. It was the relationship thing.
Yeah. I mean, the hard part is because you immediately start throwing words like connections around, and then it's like, you missed the point, like, and that's
right.
The hard part that I think so many people who are greens like get into this thing too, and they immediately like enter relationships with that mindset of like, oh, this is a connection. This is going to do something for me. This is going to,
Right.
And that's
for sure.
Such a bad place to be in. And I mean, I'm guilty of it, like we all are, but because that's like a scarcity mindset type thing, I think, where it's like, oh yeah, I just need something from this person and that's going to help me go forward. And like, but, so I think getting out of that and just getting into the idea of just, no, like I just like you as a person and I think your art's great. And like, we're doing this together and we're navigating the emotions around like, oh, you're worried about X, Y, and Z. Well, like, I'm sure that it's not. Like, do you trust me? Okay. Like, so that's my rant on connections. Well, not connections, but relationships. But yeah, that's what makes the music go around.
Absolutely. Yeah, dude, this has been so much fun to catch up again. And as the thank you for coming once again on the show.
Absolutely.
As we draw it to a close, I know you already answered the final question of the show of patience being the thing you would tell your earlier self or tell people coming up. But just to ask you a little bit about creative juices and staying inspired. We all have days where we're super hyped to get in the studio, and then there's days where we're a little less hyped to get in the studio.
Yeah.
And you may have answered this question. I don't even know if I asked you back in the day, but maybe it's a habit or routine or it could be anything that kind of helps you stay jazzed to do the work you do and energized and happy to do what you do.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you a few answers, I guess. But like the first one, I mean, still comes back to just the relationships, you know, like, again, it's fresh in my mind, but like last night, it was just so like life-giving to like do revisions, you know, over audio movers and like have fun. And like I just came out of that like being like, oh man, this is so great. This is fun. You know, we collaborated. We had some good ideas. We nerded out on some music. Like we're both stoked on where this song sounds. Like that to me is like the joy of like, oh man, I couldn't wake up today to do this interview. Like that type of thing. You know, I'm going to mix a record after this, but it's like that's almost secondary to just like the connection of having this conversation, and knowing people are going to be listening to this conversation is awesome too. But that's definitely part of it. But I'm also a big routine person. So, you know, knowing my routine of getting up and working and that, you know, that keeps me, I think, grounded more than, let's say, like inspired. But then also just, I'm a big sort of person where I think everything influences everything. So, you know, even if it's like the TV show that I'm watching like later tonight, or, you know, if I'm browsing YouTube or listening to podcasts, like I try not to listen to them strictly from a consumerist point of view, but also just from like an inspiration. Like, how can I use this sort of idea or knowledge, or even just if it is a mindless TV show, like this makes me feel a certain way. I wonder why. Like, in poking and prodding at those sort of ideas of why does this feel sad to me right now? You know, in this show that I'm watching, is it cinematically dark and dreary, or is it the music playing, or is it the actors, or is it the dialogue? You know, so using that as inspiration, and then, you know, thinking in depth in a way like that when I'm sitting down to mix as well. Like it's kind of a muscle that I try and flex and think through a lot. So yeah, I guess just everything keeps me inspired, really. And then I also just try and not do the things that I don't like to do, which sounds bad, you know, but getting rid of things that don't bring me energy as much as possible kind of keeps things moving forward and fresh too.
Yeah, like ain't nobody got time for taxes, you know?
Well, I mean, I hire somebody, you know, like it costs money, but I hire somebody. Or like back to the assistant thing, like prepping isn't always the most fun thing. So I pay somebody to do it for me, and that just keeps, and not everybody has that luxury. Like that took me, again, 10 years to be able to afford an accountant, and 10 years to be able to afford somebody who I could pay to, you know, assist on certain things. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what keeps my creative juices flowing. And also, like, if I'm not feeling inspired some days, I'll just be like, I'll mix that record tomorrow. You know, like if I like had a busy morning or something and I get to the studio and I'm just like, my brain's all flustered, like I keep a flexible enough schedule that I could be like, you know what? I'm not going to do my best work today. I'll do it tomorrow. And I think that's sort of important too, where you don't necessarily force yourself. Yeah. I mean, you could easily fall into just like a place of laziness, I think, in that. But I think I have a healthy enough relationship with that side of how I work that I could just be like, you know what? I'm not working today. I'm not mixing a record, you know?
Yeah.
And then I come back tomorrow and I do 2 in a day and I'm stronger than ever. So
yeah, it's so important to remember that rest is just as important as activity. And like, you know, it's like a silly analogy, but like music isn't just the notes that you're playing. It's also the space in between the notes.
Absolutely.
As like a bass player, like when you stop your note from ringing is almost as important as when it began.
Yes.
Actually, Damian Taylor, who was on the show, who he's worked with like Bjork, guys like an inspiration. And he was telling me how he thinks of going to sleep as like pulling the arrow back for the next day to be a really, you know, a good arrow shot or whatever.
Yeah.
But the idea is that like nighttime is the beginning of the next day, as opposed to nighttime being the end of this day, which was a very big aha moment for me. And funnily in Judaism, the days start at night, right? Like the Jewish Sabbath starts at night.
Interesting.
Which was like a fun connection for me. But yeah, it's like we really got to remember that like if we're not doing our best right now, taking a break might be the best thing to do. And it's hard because I think of myself as like, you know, coming from like Jewish New York, where there's like a hustle mentality and like a productivity mentality, and like we get so much of our juices from just being productive and feeling like we're busy or whatever.
Yeah.
To like realize that's actually really stupid. And I'm trying so hard to not have that be a measure of success in my day of, oh, I felt busy today. And it's a real thing I struggle with, and I think a lot of New Yorkers do, and maybe a lot of Americans do.
Yeah.
It's that capitalistic productivity busyness thing, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,